Okay, everybody. Sorry, I don't have a gavel. It is 12 o'clock, and I would like to call this work session of the Municipal Service District Advisory Committee to order. Do you have a sheet that you can take the roll? Okay. Kim?
David Barthol.
Here.
Sabrina Bingo.
Here.
Gretchen Dupiza.
Here.
Lynn Herrickle.
Here.
John Harrelson.
He's here. He was. He
Here.
just dropped.
Was sitting there.
Chris Hoagland.
Here.
Von Lewis.
Here.
Mickey Miller. Michael Raines.
Here.
Johnny Robinson.
Here.
Michaela Rose Watson.
Here.
Alderman Pearl.
Here.
Alderman Royal. Foster Hughes.
Here.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. And everybody, there are some Chick-fil-A sandwiches there if anybody wants lunch. We'll have a working lunch, so that will work for us really well. On our agenda, we have review potential projects in the following categories: safety, beautification, maintenance, infrastructure. And I just want to review some of what we've been trying to do. So because so many of you are new to MSD and understanding the whole process, you know, what we're trying to do with these workshops is really to give you more information. So we've made our list of potential projects, we've looked at them, and now we're trying to bite off smaller pieces and understanding, you know, some of the resources that are out there that we can use. And then at some point, I promise you, we're going to move forward to picking out an evaluation criteria, because that's what we need to do. We'll have all this information, and then how do we evaluate what we've heard? How do we decide what is in the best interest of our MSD taxes being spent, and then moving forward on that? And, you know, I think it's important that we understand what that process is and that we look at each of these. So that's how our workshops will be going, because we're not ready to make decisions, because I don't think we have enough information to make any, when I say decisions, to make any advice to the Board of Aldermen at this point. With that being said, I do want to address a letter that we all received. Thank you, Foster, for passing that along to us from Mrs. Cho. Maria, thank you. I appreciate you sending this, because it had a lot of great information on it. So I did a lot of research, which I've known about the Wilmington MSD for a while now. Wilmington has an MSD, and it was formed, and I think it was approved in 2016. They had the first meeting in 2017. And I just want to talk a little bit. I'm not sure it's apples to apples. Some of the ideas are really good, and I think could be really good for New Bern, but I see it as two separately distinct different things, some of which somebody pointed out to me is that in Wilmington, all parking is paid. There's no free parking in Wilmington, so they get a lot of their funds from parking in their MSD. Their MSD includes, it's a 70-block district, so that's how large it is. It's 70 blocks. Their tax rate is lower. Their tax rate is a little over 6 cents per $100 of value versus our 11 cents per $100 value. They collect twice as much MSD tax as we collect. In fiscal year 24, their approved budget was almost $900,000 in revenue. And then they operate as an independent department almost of the city. So they have 2 paid staff members that cost about $140,000 a year paid out of the MSD tax, another $52,000 in benefits. And then they have $602,000 in operating expenses. So we say, okay, operating, what are they doing? What they're actually doing is they contract through an organization called Wilmington Downtown Incorporated. I would say they're our version of Swiss Bear, even though it's not a Main Street organization. It is their nonprofit that is in Wilmington, and that is how they operate. Because their population is, that's the one thing I don't know, their population is probably, what, hundreds of thousands of people for a city versus our 30,000 or 33,000 that they're in. Population much different. So They contract with the Wilmington Downtown Incorporated, who then contracts with Block Buddies, I think it's called. Block to Block, yeah. And they contract through that. So the description of downtown Wilmington Incorporated, it's the economic and social hub for the region. Downtown investment has grown since 2014, and more than $650 million has been invested in Wilmington in the past 6 years in apartments, condos, hotels. Everybody would have a fit if we had that.
120,000.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah.
350 additional units are under construction. Downtown is home to about 880 businesses, 7,969 housing units, and more than 13,500 residents. So you can see this is not an apples to apples kind of situation. Still, good ideas. As a hospitality and tourism center, Wilmington also boasts an amazing Riverwalk, as we have, and their mission is to promote the economic growth and development of downtown Wilmington. There are public-private partnerships, and again, their centerpiece, they talk about it on their website, their centerpiece is this MSD Ambassadors Program. When I thought about Ambassadors Program, isn't that nice? I always wanted that for New Bern, but I thought of it as volunteers. This is a paid program. And I did go to Block, and you can go on there and look at that. It's got a lot of interesting information, you know, for cities, for parks. I mean, the city might want to look at it, but it has a cost to it. And the cost is the $600,000 that you see in this budget is contracted, the majority of it, to the Wilmington Downtown Incorporated to provide these services. And so the block by block, they go and they clean the sidewalks, and they have their people in uniforms, and people can speak to them, and they give information, and it's really very, very well put together. But they have this Block to Block as a national program. It's in Louisville, it's in Santa Monica, it's in other cities across our country that are much larger than we are.
And it's in Wilmington.
And it's in Wilmington,
Right.
correct. And it's in Wilmington. But again, you know, much larger population, much more land space. So as we're going through and we're listening to all this, the point of what I'm making is I appreciate the information. I think it has a lot of benefit to us. I think it will really help us to define some things and maybe working with Swiss Bayer. But for many years, for the last 40 years, MSD has really focused on their funds being infrastructure and nothing else. Because the city always had said we cannot afford to do this infrastructure such as utilities underground and some of the other projects, purchasing property, whatever. So as we move forward, we need to decide, are we still in the business of infrastructure and spending our dollars there? Do we want to contract with a Swiss Bayer, which is allowed by law for us to do other services? Do we want to hire somebody? We're going to talk to the police chief today to talk about increased security and talk about, you know, policing downtown. Just like we hired parking people, do we want to hire extra policemen? Do we want to hire somebody who does nothing but clean our sidewalks and street? You know, I don't know, a block to block might be prohibitive to us, you know, dollar-wise, but maybe we can take a formulation of that and hire our own people to do something like that. I'm just saying all this to give you some context of where we're at and where we need to go. And it's going to be the decision of this group is how we spend those dollars. Do we continue? You know, for all these years, we had so little money that we wanted to pool it to pay off a loan to go to infrastructure and nothing else. There was really no other monies left to do that. We built a little bit of a nest egg. That's agreed upon. But now how do we wisely, you know, when you take on an employee, when you take on a service, it's not a one-shot deal, so you have to be able to continue to fund that. So we have to remember that as well. So that's, anybody have any questions about that information? I did want to address that since we all got the information. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew. But, you know, please go to the City of Wilmington website. You can go to Wilmington. It's WDI, Downtown, Wilmington Downtown Incorporated. It'll tell you the block to block. You can click on that and go to the block to block website. It's got a lot of good information. It sounds great, but it costs. You know, as Danny Meadows, my favorite saying is, money can make the bear dance, and it can. So,
Brandon?
Yes, sir.
Speaking of money, is there a minimum balance that we need to maintain in the account?
No, we have to, you know, based on the new legislation, which we are grandfathered under the old legislation. But under the new legislation, you can't keep a lot of money in your bank account, basically.
There's a maximum.
Yeah, there's a maximum amount of money you can keep, and you can't just pool money and just continue to keep it there without spending it and doing something with it. We are grandfathered under the old rules, but still, the idea is not to pool the money, it's to spend the money, but spend it wisely. You know, it may be that instead of one project that we pay total cash for, we could do 3 or 4 projects and borrow the money and make payments. And to me, this is my personal opinion, not the opinion of this board, that we want more bang for our buck. If we could do 4 projects, I'd rather do 4 projects than 1 project we pay cash. Even though, you know, it would spend down our funds and we'll continue to put money in there, there'll always be a project for us to come down, you know. And of course, when somebody sees that you have a pot of money, they're always asking, can MSD fund this, can MSD fund that?
And Sabrina, potentially, it could be a combination of both, right? Where you could
Correct.
choose like 3 or 4 larger projects and have that as debt service, and then take some of the smaller projects
And pay cash.
cash.
Absolutely. Or we could, you know, contract out services and let somebody else run all this, and that certainly is our option to do that as well. Or we could explore that and make that advice to the board of aldermen. Okay? Anybody have any questions before I ask our police chief to come and speak to us? Okay. Chief, good to see you.
Good to see you, Sabrina. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. This is our wonderful police chief. Does everybody know? Our chief down here? Yes, everybody? Okay. So he's come today to talk to us a little bit about downtown, the safety, you know, the issues. A lot of times, I remember, you know, when I was the alderman, people will say, well, there's all these problems going on downtown. And so I called the chief and he said, Sabrina, I haven't gotten one call. Nobody's called me. So it's hard for the police to do their job if nothing's being reported to them, because they can't act on hearsay or what somebody says. You know, if they get a report, they go and check it out and they do that. So I think he's going to talk to us a little bit about the importance of doing that, as well as what has been reported and what we may want to do as a group to increase. Because we talked about that we want our downtown to be safe, and we want people to feel safe in our downtown at all times. So, Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you have some discussion with us today.
Not unlike anywhere else in the city, our focus obviously is to have enough staff on site or on patrol that is capable of responding to any emergency that may come up. For instance, yesterday, out of the blue, we received an active shooter complaint at the high school. Now, there's nobody at the high school. It's spring break, but we have to take those seriously. So you can imagine if somebody calls in and says there's an active shooter in the high school, that's going to cause a response. So we have developed a requirement that we have what we call our minimum staffing protocol. And that is, we have to have 6 patrol officers and 1 supervisor. Required. Now, let's just say somebody calls in sick and somebody's out of town on training, and we're down to 5 patrol officers and a supervisor. Well, now we've got to call somebody in, because although technically could we cross our fingers and hope that all will be okay? Obviously, yes, but that's not a suitable solution for planning for the unknown. So that now requires us to call somebody in, or if we have traffic officers that are working, they have to be reassigned from traffic-related responsibilities for patrol responsibilities. So you can imagine the stress that puts on our staff, our uniform patrol staff, in terms of covering 30 square miles, and it's not a contiguous 30 square miles. We all know that the person that lives in Blue Water Rise deserves to have patrol presence. And it is not as convenient for that patrol officer that's patrolling that southern area of the city to easily migrate up into the main city area. So with respect to the downtown, and I know that all of that is prefacing this, we have at least 1 officer assigned to this district on both shifts, day shift and night shift. So when that officer is not committed to a call for service, they are required to be in this district and required to be seen. And one of the additional requirements is that they are to be active, patrolling, especially in the neighborhoods. That is critically important. But oftentimes what we see, because the downtown district and the historical area has such few calls for service, they are oftentimes pulled from there to go to other areas of the city that is requiring additional police resources. And so when you might say to yourself, well, I haven't seen a patrol officer through here all day. And it's not that they're not working. Chances are they may be at the hospital, they may be at the magistrate's office, they may be backing up another officer. So that does create a little bit of a challenge for us to maintain a presence. During the daytime, after about 2 o'clock in the morning, our patrol officers are required to do directed patrols. And throughout the year, we have thousands of directed patrols. So although you may not know this, but in the downtown area, our patrol officers are driving behind Franklin's, or they're driving through the areas, and they are required to do that. They're required to be present. They're required to ensure that there are no broken windows and that there's no doors that are left unlocked. And these go on in all 7 or all 6 of our patrol districts. The crime rate compared to anywhere else in this city is relatively low. And we have had situations, I've spoken in this particular room about a situation about 1.5 years, 2 years ago involving an incident in 500 block of Middle Street. I haven't forgotten about that. It was a very terrible situation. And we took proactive steps to try to provide as much security for those that lived on Middle Street and those surrounding areas. We had an incident involving a person that believed that they were targeted by a stalker, and we took that very seriously. But other than the shooting that occurred right outside of City Hall, outside of the courthouse, which was an anomaly, this was an aide-de-well from Vanceboro who was a gang member that was at court that decided this was a great opportunity to seek vengeance and killed at least one person. Other than that, this is a very safe place to live, and as many of you know, I lived for 1.5 years right over here at Skyset. And I would spend many nights walking this area, and I never once felt unsafe. And I hope that most residents, most people that work here, most people that will visit here will feel the same way. Now, are there quality of life concerns? Yes. Noise complaints, alcohol, the issues associated with that, urinating in public, smoking marijuana. These are the types of activities that generally occur when you have young people that come here and they're here for the bar scenes. We have taken some proactive approaches to ensure that our sidewalk cafe permits are in order. Every Monday I receive a report. We patrol every single night to ensure that all the businesses downtown that have a sidewalk cafe permit are in compliance, and if they're not, we have conversations with our city attorneys. The problems with noise, and I do want to spend a little bit of time because I can foresee maybe some questions about that. The noise ordinance, unlike a lot of places throughout the country, is a civil offense. It's not a crime. Playing your music too loud is not a criminal act. It is a violation of a civil ordinance. In order to cite somebody for a noise ordinance, we have to take 3 noise readings with the equipment that we have purchased. Even if a person is in violation, they receive a civil fine. One of the best way I can put this, frustration for the chief of police is when I know that there is a business that simply understands that by way of attracting more customers, they can crank their music up and they just accept their fines. It's a cost of doing business, so to speak. We see that not just here downtown, but we have other places in the city. 30-something is one that we are challenged with. Some of the other issues are embedded in the language of the code. The code does not pertain to the percussion sounds of bass. Bass is not part of our ordinance. It is the higher decimal levels associated with the noise. So you could be under the 60 megahertz threshold, but your window is shaking because the bass is just incredibly annoying. But the phrase that I've heard many in this business say, it may be awful, but it is lawful. And as the chief of police, I cannot tell my staff to engage in unlawful enforcement. I heard that there was the potential for hiring additional staff. I think that is one way of addressing some concerns that you might have in terms of presence. It wasn't last year, it was the year before last, we parked our Segway machines at SkySail for added visibility. But one of the challenges for that was I had to come to my boss and say, I'm running out of overtime money. And in October of 2023, I projected that we would be not just over our overtime budget, but we would be woefully over our overtime budget in the tune of about $70,000. And in order to accomplish the requirements that I've just stated about having minimum staffing and addressing all the other issues that come up specifically with respect to violent crime and violent crime investigations, it takes a toll on our staff because although in some professions you would just simply clock out at 5 o'clock and whatever you have left over you pick up the very next day. In this business, much like my friends at the fire department, 5 o'clock may come, you're still working because the building is still on fire, or you still have an arrest and you have to obtain a search warrant, or you have to, in furtherance of a law enforcement need. So we have extra duty options, and these have been the guidelines for off-duty, extra duty assignments has been regulated by the Board of Aldermen. That is $45 an hour for a patrol officer, a minimum of 3 hours. And I have all the particulars if you wish. This is not unusual. This happens all the time. We have vendors that come to us. The carnival, which is, by the way, a great option for our community, but they hire 2 of our officers every day so that we can ensure that there is a presence of law enforcement at the carnival. And the fee is not something that I've come up with. This is a fee that has been determined by the Board of Aldermen to be appropriate. One of the things I will say is, although they wear 2 hats and they technically have 2 employers, there's the City of New Bern, who is their employer that holds their certification. But then there's this other employer that has now said, I'm paying you to do this job. Well, yes, that is true. However, until that officer has to take a law enforcement action. The moment that officer has to take a law enforcement action, let's just say they observe 2 people fighting, and they have to arrest one of them. At that point, they now have to say, okay, I was working for you. Now I am working under the color of law. I am now a New Bern police officer. Now I, or the City of New Bern, we now have to pay them. So they come off of your payroll. They now come onto our payroll, and all the workman's comp and all the things that are associated with an officer that works under the color of law has to do, and they likely will have to transport that person, and they no longer are going to be present for you. It doesn't happen that often downtown, but it's important for you to understand that although they may be working for you, they are always a police officer, and at times will have to take that action. Helen?
Also, thanks, Chief, also if for those off-duty, extra-duty officers, that's voluntary on the part of the officer to sign up for it, correct? So it's not necessarily a guarantee that somebody will sign up for that particular opportunity. It's just an opportunity made available to officers who aren't working that particular shift.
That is correct. We have a system called Off-Duty Blue that the officers can go into and see the schedule of extra duty assignments that are out there. It's first come, first served. Many of the young officers, $45 is a lot of money. Let's think about this for a second, and officers know this too. If you happen to not be a police officer, say you work in the library, you're a school teacher, and you need to make extra money. What's the minimum wage? I don't know what that is, but let's just say it's $12 an hour. How many hours do you have to work to make $45? I mean, there's a heck of a carrot there for officers to say, yeah, I can make a lot of money to do something like this. So you are absolutely correct. It is voluntary. And that we've had times where it may be a Saturday and it's more difficult to pull in officers that may have other things that they want to do. So I do share that.
Is there a possibility of us, just like we hired the parking attendants, right? MSD did that, and there are so many part-time. Is there a possibility of us hiring a group of, officers or doing something like that so that we don't fall in? I mean, if this is something that we want to do and we feel that, we want to cover Thursday through Sunday because that's really our days when there's trouble, or we feel like we need presence from 12 to 6 every day, whatever this group talks about and decides. Is that a possibility to do that just like we did with the parking attendants?
So there is a possibility for this board to make a recommendation to the governing board that we allocate a certain amount of funds toward law enforcement on that, yes. Then what it would be up to the chief to do is to analyze whether or not an additional position would be needed to actually cover that, so yes.
But that is that could be a possibility we talk about. Because I'm just concerned with the volunteer stuff. When we need it, we wouldn't have it. Again, especially if there's, things going on in the city, extra events and things like that we may need. We feel that we need enforcement, or streets closed or something, that you may not have the staff, and it would be a benefit.
When the officers get hired, does that go to the officer or to the city and then to the officer? Is that money?
It's extra duty anyway.
I believe, let me just qualify this with the caveat that I may have to correct myself. I believe that, go ahead.
I think I can answer
Okay.
because I've done this before. So it's obviously done through your department. When I do it, I write out the check to the officer's name, but then we give it to the police department to pass that check out to the officers.
Yes, what I was going to say is, I don't believe we make any money off of this.
Goes directly to the
It goes-
officer.
Yes, it does go to the officer.
I'm just curious. Another question I have too is on the fine, the decibel fine. Who gets that money? Is that to the city's general fund, or is that to the police department, or how does that work?
It does go into the general fund. Normally it depends on where it is. I don't think any noise ordinance violations go into the MSD fund. I think it's just parking.
Can I ask this different question too, is what if we have the cars that patrol for parking? And when I say this, I know you're probably going to cringe, Chief, but okay, what if we had a security guard and his rule was not to leave the vehicle? So if the other officer had to go to the hospital, we have a security guard that just patrols. All he does is call in, okay, Chris Hublin's peeing on the side of the building. He does not get out of the car, but it's a nice, so he drives to the community and do whatever. Is that a feasible thing? Because that would be half the cost of what a police officer would be. Anyway, that's a thought.
Most certainly would be a lot more economic for you. I'll make this statement. You can always hire, anybody can hire private security. There's plenty out there. What I would caution is, in order to take a law enforcement action, the arresting officer, whether it's a deputy sheriff, whether it's an ALE officer, a Negro police officer, state trooper, whatever, they have to see the violation. So peeing on the side of a building and then, hey, I see this guy.
Right.
And then the officer comes up and goes, yeah, I saw him peeing. Well, I'm the officer, I can see him peeing. This is a misdemeanor that did not occur in my presence. A felony is a different breed. A felony, an officer can arrest without seeing it, just establishing probable cause. The other part I would suggest you consider, I'm not trying to drum up business with the officers, I'm really not. One of the deterrent factors is a lot of those that would engage in these types of behaviors will look and go, oh, that's just a security guard. They know the difference between a deputy, a police officer, a trooper, and, well, you know, Arthur, the mall cop. They know the difference.
Well, and I know what comes, we've seen all kinds of stuff where you have a security guard that also thinks that he's a policeman and causes more damage than what. My thinking was just, you know, eyes on the road, that all they're doing is to pay attention that, and those two dudes don't look like they should be going the back door over there. They call in and have the ability to be, all I'm saying is eyes. I wouldn't want a security guard to get out of the car because I know the liability for this city. Most likely, he's going to create more headache than, you know, security guards where their heads are big. So that to me, it would be just.
When you say the security, are you talking about a police officer acting in that?
Well, I mean, obviously, the goal would be to have an off-duty police officer, but I would say, okay, so like, you know, we had to protect the city from being invaded. When we all go to sleep, you've got some hitchhikers around just to keep an eye on it, so you can call the chief to bring in the squad. But I wouldn't want the responsibility for the city to have someone, they would carry a gun or a billy club or a laser gun or whatever you want to call it and get out of the car and get to say to Johnny, hey man, I saw you do this, and the next thing there's a skirmish. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. All I'm saying is when those officers are busy and they go out of town, hey, we still know that there's one or two dudes driving around the street looking to see what goes on. They can call in because the rest of us are asleep. And I'm sorry, I know that's probably a little silly, but to me, I would think that would be half the cost of what, sorry, Chief, shoot police officer.
Chief, if there was video of the person urinating on the building, would that then lead the officer who then shows up later to be able to make an arrest, or
No, what that would
has to
be-
see it physically?
And that's it, physically. Now, that would be evidence in court. The officer could go to a magistrate and say, look at this video, this is Joey Bag of Donuts, he was peeing on the thing, and this happened today at this location, get a warrant, go back and arrest him. But I would suggest to you that that's not the best course of action for, you know, such a low-level
Agreed.
act that you wouldn't, you know, now if somebody threw a rock through a window, and we're talking about destruction of property, clearly we want to intervene on that person. Just because the officer didn't see it doesn't mean an investigation can't occur. Probable cause established, go before a magistrate, raise your right hand, I swear to tell the truth, here's all my probable cause. Magistrate gives you a warrant, go back and arrest him.
Some other questions over here? I've got a couple.
I have a comment that is sort of unrelated to this, but on the noise ordinance, if that's just perceived as cost of doing business, can the alderman at least explore having an escalating fine? The first offense, the second?
There is already built
Apparently,
in.
maybe they need to look at escalating it higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no three strikes you're out kind of thing on the noise ordinance?
At some point, it escalates to where it hurts, and that's when the music will stop.
And when you say 3 readings over what period?
Oh, it can be one right after another, but we have to obtain 3 readings. And there are some reasons behind that. You want to make sure that through a due process lens that each one of those readings, and you take, so it wouldn't be an anomaly, meaning, all by a sudden, you took the one reading, but that spiked because some car came by with a blaring radio. So our procedures are pretty sound. We can say very objectively that our readings are as objective as possible. And if you want to dispute this, then we clearly have enough objective evidence to say, no, you were illegal.
Chief, how many citations have you issued downtown for noise?
I'd have to go back and look at that. We have now I will say this, we have responded to many, that's a very subjective way of putting it. I don't have an exact number. But of the responding officers that come out to say, yes, that's allowed, we take the 3 readings, a vast majority do not reach the threshold for legal action. I can give you a very quick example of what I'm talking about. There was a prom over at the Palace, and when the officers took the reading, the noise was below the recommended level, and literally showed it to the resident. I can't write this person. I hear it. What was unknown at that time, or maybe not recognized at that time, was the reason it was below the limit is there's a 10 or 12 foot brick wall. And so the sound above, so if you're on the 2nd floor, it would have been much, much higher. But police officers aren't going into your living room to take the reading. It's right there on the ground. So
Are
that
they
was
allowed
one.
to? If the
Sure,
resident
the
says...
resident said, come on in my house. Right.
So the sound reading is taking where the complaint is made, not like right up against
That's
wherever
right.
they are, where the sound is coming from.
I mean, and there's a reason for that, because you don't want to walk right up to the speaker and go,
Yeah,
sure.
well, yeah, exactly.
I have one other question too. You said earlier there's one officer assigned to this district.
That's right.
What is the definition of the district? Is it just municipal service district, or is it wider swath than that? or-
Yes, it very much, and I wish I would have brought a map, and I apologize, but if you just go on the New Bern Police Department website, we have the districts listed,
Okay, thank you.
the very specific areas. So
Does it include north of Broad Street into the historic district as
Yeah,
well?
oh, yes,
Yes.
yes. In fact, almost the entire historic district, now I don't know if the historic district goes up
Goes into
national.
Ghent. Yeah, it does.
Into
Yeah.
into Riverside.
So
Right.
up in that area, that is a different district.
Chief, I have another question related to this block by block, or whatever the program that was being discussed earlier. The information I saw on the website was that business, that organization offers 2 things. One is security and one is like cleanliness. On the security, from what you said, I'm assuming that those would be like the mall cops, that they would not be officers for the city of New Bern. They would be hired by Swiss Bear or the MSD or something.
By that
So they're
company,
gonna
block by block hires.
Yeah, so they're going to be in the category of not being able to make arrests and not being able to write a ticket for peeing on the building because they're not authorized. Would that probably be?
Yes, and I'm going to tell you, right now in New Bern, there are multiple areas that have private security that drive around and ensure that they have a presence, whether it is an apartment complex hires them out, they come out.
The hospital has their own security.
Well, hospital has their own police.
Okay, so they are true police
Yes,
force.
they-
What
they-
about like the community college? I know they have a security, I've seen them.
They have security, they're not sworn officers, they're not regulated by training and standards.
Chief, a couple other issues that have plagued downtown, and I think it would be good to address them a little bit, is panhandlers and how that's handled, because from time to time, sometimes it's really bad, and It's like they tell all their friends, and we have a dozen of them, and then I haven't really seen very many lately, thankfully.
I got one yesterday.
Actually,
And then-
I've seen several recently.
Okay, and then the homeless situation, people sleeping on benches, because we talk a little bit about that, because I think that's all part of security and feeling safe and welcoming in our downtown.
So this is probably within the lines of that awful but lawful conversation. Panhandling is completely legal. Busking is completely legal as long as you don't have,
Sound ordinance.
yeah, well, you can bus, but you can't have electrified, amplified music. Now, in panhandling, and we've trained our staff multiple times as to where you can panhandle and when and where you can't. For instance, you cannot panhandle directly in front of a business. You cannot panhandle in the roadway. You cannot panhandle, believe it or not, at a bus station. So the state of North Carolina has provided a lot of guidelines. But if you're just there with your cup and say, hey, can I have some money? Can I have some money? Can I have some money? We see it all the time. Go to Walmart. You see, a lady and her kid just sitting there with a bucket, or off of 70, you see people standing there. And unfortunately, it is not illegal. It's the same thing with being homeless. We put a lot of effort into, we, being the police department, to engage in the faith-based community, with RCS, with multiple other entities, to say, what can we do to try to provide as many services as we can. Unfortunately, there are a fair number of people that simply do not want our services. I know several that I see all the time, and I know who they are. More times than not, they stated themselves. There was a woman, I haven't seen her in probably a year and a half, and I remember speaking to her. She absolutely would not go to the shelter, and she would just sleep on the bench, or she would find a place and just lay down and sleep. Is it unsightly? Of course it is. But the reality is, we're not going to take a governmental action against a person that's not committing a crime. That puts you in federal court very, very quickly. And, the argument that, well, it just doesn't look good. And we can all agree, you're absolutely right, it doesn't look good. Or the notion that, well, can you just run them off? Well, one, yes, but two, I see you in federal court, and I don't want to be in federal.
No, Chief, there are city ordinances, right, about solicitation and begging. I know last year, you think you came to the Downtown Business Council, give us a little handout of some city ordinances, but those would still only be civil offenses, correct?
So panhandling and busking, there's no city ordinance that says you can't do this. What it says is you can't do these under these conditions.
Right.
And as long as they don't violate the prohibition of those conditions, like threatening someone, doing this in the roadway,
Right.
In front of a bus stop. I just use that one because I just think that's an interesting way of adding that. As long as you don't do those things.
Go
And I have-
back and say, you said in front of a business, so if somebody is standing in front of that business and as customers,
No, in
because
front of
I've
the
seen it
door.
in Chelsea, that person would stand right there, the door, and you're trying to get in and they're stopping.
No, they
and say-
cannot be in front of the door. They cannot, nor can they, so if there's three of them, you can't block the ebb and flow of pedestrians. But if you're just standing in the sidewalk with your cup and people can walk past you,
But if
that's
you go
okay.
up to somebody, if you walk up to them and say, hey, I need money to eat, or I can't pay my light bill and I need some money, they can do that.
Yes.
They can walk up to somebody. They just can't stand in front of the door of a business.
I
And
think this might be.
Now, some of it may be a bit subjective, but if they come up and say, give me money, if it's done in a threatening
And
manner,
aggressive.
that's different, that's a violation.
But that would have to be witnessed by the enforcing officer.
Yes, yes, so a citizen says this, hey, this is what I've had. Now, what I would suggest would be, okay, who this person is. Are you willing to come to court? If the answer is yes, we can further the investigation. We can take an enforcement action. We can now go get a warrant, is what I'm saying. Now, you have to do that. Now, if this person says, you know, I'm from Greenville and I just came down here to eat at Poppy's or some other place, I'm not coming back here to go to court. Now, the officer might then excrete himself or herself, let the panhandle believe that the police have left, and then monitor. That's what I would do if I was the patrol officer and go. Now, what I would also do is walk up and have that conversation with the panhandle. Did you do these things? Now, if he confesses to doing those things, I don't think I'm getting to court on that one without a witness, but at least they know they're being watched.
Could the alderman broaden the definition? That might be more of an attorney question. Could the alderman broaden that ordinance to prohibit that?
Yeah, that would be a legal question, and of course, the aldermen have the ability to pass or to amend any ordinance. They have that right to do so. But I always suggest that before you take a step that way, you need to look at what are the unintended consequences of that action
I
might
think
be.
we passed that because this was put in while I was in office, and I think we went as far as we could go based on what Scott advised us. And usually, you know, we don't just come up with the ordinances. Scott will review them and say, look, you can do this, you can't do this.
Yeah, the state statute, and then that's a freedom of speech issue
Correct.
as well.
I think our biggest problem is, and I've been a donator to RCS and a supporter forever, but over my years at Chelsea, I believe when RCS in Raleigh is full, don't they do some bringing down of people?
I've not heard that.
We
I'm
do-
not saying it's not true, but
Yeah.
I've not heard that.
We do get, all of a sudden, you'll go through a cycle, everything's cool, but all of a sudden, you notice new people. And where's downtown? Right around the corner. And so that's why we see most of the panhandlers is,
Actually, that could be researched though, because you can't get a bed at RCS without getting a secure, or a background check
Right.
from the police officer. So if they had, if there was a bus full, if they had 6 people walk in, I need to, that'd be on their radar.
well, no, I wouldn't want to do that, but, you know, and then if they get drunk, they're not allowed to go back in that night. So, but I have, over the years, you know, and they walk in and everything's cool, and they get one beer, and then all of a sudden they had popped a pill or whatever they're doing, and they flip out to this monster of a person.
So the sad reality is that there are a lot of kind-hearted people that either live here or will come here, and they will give a lot of money. And so that encourages or promotes the idea that, hey, if you're going to panhandle, you go where people have the money. And that's an unfortunate reality.
And to RCS as well. We do have some halfway houses right up on Broad Street where it's rooms by the day or whatever the week. So that's also a major.
Well, and sometimes this is not necessarily an MSD issue, it's a
Yeah.
downtown business issue, but is, you know, notifying staff, because there was a while that we had that gentleman that he would tell people that his wife just got sick and they had to take her to the hospital. He doesn't have a car, he doesn't have transportation.
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah, so and what you have to do is then we're trying to pass it business to business to say, hey, tell your customers, I almost want to put a sign in the window at the Pepsi store that says, hey, if somebody says this, it is not true. Because, you know, you get people from out of town who don't know any better and they feel, oh, this poor guy, his wife's sick and, you know, he needs money, he makes more money than my employees, you know. Bad handle it that way, but that person was here.
So we had a guy come in and he was broken down on the bridge, his wife was in the car, and he was out of gas. And John said, I got an empty tank in my car, let's go. And he was like, oh, no, that's,
That's usually the sign.
yeah. Because John had helped you immediately, but that was not what he was looking for.
One other issue I want to bring up, because I've heard it again, downtown business, whatever, and that is some of the events that we have downtown, especially the bar crawls. So how that's formulated, who they talk to, should there be added security, people are drinking. I know Michael Lee had brought it up, maybe it was at TDA
It
or
was
something we
the-
talked about, or maybe it was at downtown business.
I think St. Patty's Day.
It was the
It's
St.
St.
Patty's
Patty's Day.
Day pub crawl that no one knew about, because I guess it was advertised just through the pubs. And I thought it was an event that was sanctioned by somebody, because it was there were just so many people. And they were all over the streets and all over the sidewalk, and I was busy. I mean, I have little kids that come into my place, and and no, I didn't think about calling the police. I was busy with my people, and it was just like happening. And it wasn't young people, it was retirees, and they're tipsy out there. They're running around all over the place, and they're just all tipsy. And I'm glad they were having to get started at 1 in the afternoon. And I'm like, wow, and it goes until 11 p.m. And what did the poster say? It's planned on spending 15 to 20 minutes per establishment, and there were, I think, 18 establishments. So I did the math. Yes, it's a lot of drinking.
So I saw the same.
How sales do that?
Yeah.
I'm sure theirs did great.
That's
I
probably
saw
an
that.
example of the awful but lawful.
Right, well, I saw that same poster that you described on Monday morning, and I asked my staff, did anybody know about this? I said, first I'm seeing this. I try to reserve much of my comments, because I know I am the police chief, but I think it was disingenuous for those bar owners to have done that without some kind of strategy
Organization.
to keep everybody safe.
Well, I'm going to speak on that as well.
Those pub crawls are done through private people who we don't even know. They come to us and say, hey, we're doing a pub crawl.
Yes.
We want to stop by your place.
Yeah.
We're not going to say, don't ever come to our place. Don't come to our place.
Right.
So we're open for business every day. If they come in, they come in. But it's the bars, and we do not coordinate that.
Yeah.
That is not us.
And I've been at the bar at the Chelsea for 32 years, and I've never had ever a penalty or anything like that. We don't pull around. Same goes for now the Fun Fox. When it says pub crawl from 1 o'clock till 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, there could be a few derelicts that might make it, but most of those older folks are doing it early so that they can go home early.
By 4 o'clock they're done.
Yeah. But, we used to do a parade
Yeah.
every year, and then we would have 3 bands at the Chelsea, and I'd do 500 people perform Beef Cabbage, and it was not out of control. And that's, the one thing the chief talked about. You're not going to get a call from me. I'm not putting anybody in crap. But, yes, stuff happens when people drink. So, if anything happens out in the community that was part of something I did, I would have to fit about it. So, but just so in the future we know, St. Patty's is every year on March 17th. It's always usually the first Saturday before St. Patty's. So we should run into
Yeah,
this.
this topic is coming up because how do we, as an organization, do we want that extra plateau? Do we want to have an extra person? So when March 17th and the first Saturday before March 17th comes along, we have somebody doing that. We have somebody out there for all the varied events, because most people, when they do stuff, they want to come downtown. They want to close our streets, or they want to do an event in downtown because it is so charming and welcoming. But how do we control all that? How do we protect our property? Because as property owners, we want to protect our property. We want to protect our customers if we have businesses and our residences.
Well,
So-
and maybe as bar owners, me, Vaughn, and the rest of the crew, maybe we should hire 1 or 2 officers that are off duty and be responsible for that.
So,
And I would be cool with that.
only on the outside, we do not allow our officers to have extra duty assignments inside of an agency staff.
No, I mean, be
On the
paid.
outside.
To have them on the street, so we don't have people falling down drunk on our sidewalks, I
I
guess
think
that's
this
the idea.
begs the question, what is MSD's responsibility versus what is the city's responsibility? I mean, you know, I guarantee that there are heavier police presence in certain neighborhoods because they're known to have higher crime incidences than there are in the neighborhoods that many of us live in. Those the high crime neighborhoods aren't paying for that. The city is doing their job, and the police chief is doing his job in recognizing these are where problems happen. I mean, that's where we need to be. So I would argue that the police department needs to say and be aware that, wow, there are going to be a lot of people at the St. Patty's pub crawl, and we need to have an extra policeman or two down there. I don't think that should be MSD. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's, again, we're not
No,
saying
I'm-
it's right or wrong, but we're here for discussion.
Yeah.
And to decide how we're going to
All right, no, I
advise
get it.
spend our funds.
It's not like the motion's been made.
Right, no,
to do that,
no,
But
this
I'm
is
just,
all
this is always
exploratory.
something that needs to be considered, though, is MSD has certain functions, and it shouldn't be to cover the cost that the city should have under normal circumstances.
So we need to decide what is, extra and above.
Mhm.
So I think that's the issue that we're really here. What is extra and above that we think is necessary for the downtown? Because the whole reason MSD started, because, it is the responsibility of the city to light our streets and do this, but it wasn't to the level that the property owners downtown wanted it. Therefore, we were willing to pay the tax so that we could have underground utilities, because that wasn't normal throughout the rest of the city. So that's the only discussion here is, we have police service. He just, he explained to us that he has an officer per shift. There's 2 officers day and night. They're going around, they're checking doors, they're doing things. What do we feel is necessary above and beyond that for our MSD district, and would we want to pay for
All
it?
right, and just to the point that John made, even if you do account for that, if there's a call that's made elsewhere, those officers are on patrol, they could be pulled off of patrol to go to another location. So then maybe it's not, maybe it is an MSD thing, maybe it's not an MSD thing, maybe it's the responsibility of bars. If you know that somebody is organizing this pub crawl and you're expecting to have more business, maybe some of the bars get together and pay for off-duty to be present in the downtown.
Well, I mean, people organize pub crawls on Facebook all the time. Sometimes 5 people show up, sometimes the right person posts it on
But
social
on,
media.
but St. Patrick's Day, you could be pretty sure.
What about Santa? What about SantaCon? How did you handle
Santa.
SantaCon?
We
That
had
was a big.
we had to turn people away for the pajama one and Santa Con. We're full. We can't take more than what we can take.
Yeah.
So
Did we
would
have
turn
extra
people away.
police
And we
on
still- we
downtown
got 2-star
for that?
reviews for turning
I
people
don't
away.
believe so.
Okay?
This is a terribly difficult thing for you to administer, because there's a part of me also that's thinking, on some level, this is a solution in search of a problem, because downtown is not a high crime area compared to other parts of the city. It is arguably a high awful part of the city. But the
Visible.
police can't address awful unless they actually see it.
Right.
Which means that the mall cop's not very helpful, which makes it really hard for the police to do their job, or to do what we want them to do. It's not their job to do awful. They don't have that authority, but we would love for them to do awful.
And
It's a quandary.
in something like SantaCon or a pub crawl, that's not going to rise to the level of a special event permit that the city processes unless a sidewalk is going to be used for an activity or a street is going to be closed. That's what creates a situation where the various departments get together, discuss whatever the event is, break PD and see if there's any public safety needed and things like that. So in all these instances, the city wasn't even aware of that, and we're not going to get involved with that unless we hear that there's an issue.
I just think that when there's alcohol involved, you guys should have had a heads up.
Well,
I mean, that's what I would say.
It's just a matter of what's the mechanism to catch that. I mean, TDA wasn't aware of it.
No,
you
no
know,
one was.
No one. So, I mean, there's no mechanism in place to catch it for notification.
And it was like, yes, it was a Saturday, and I'm like, what is going on? It's not even St. Patty's Day. That's not till tomorrow. And it was because it was happening the day, but my brain just didn't click because I celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I don't celebrate it the day before. So anyway, it took me a little while to sort of figure that out.
Chris hopefully got it in the notes, the Saturday before.
So I believe very strongly that a vast majority of people that would be involved in what you're describing are reasonable people. They have a designated driver, they understand where their limits are. They're not going to take 2 shots at each one of these followed by, a 12-ounce Michelob. I get that. The reality, though, is there are some outliers in there that are the ones that are going to create problems. And part of the responsibility of a bartender is not to serve an overly intoxicated person. We're talking about alcohol, and for the most part, we know where this could go if it goes bad. So I believe that if they're going to have an event, whether it's sponsored by the bar ownership or social media just sprung it up, that be on the lookout for those that have exceeded the limit. And we know that a lot of people are just going to drink as much as they want, get in the car and drive away. And that's
Well, that's, I have a question about that, out of curiosity,
I wouldn't think that is-
because one thing
But
that.
there's a difference, though. Let me make this point. There is a big difference between going to one bar and going to 18, because now I have a challenge.
Oh, of
That's the purpose of the crawl, is to how many of these I can go to. I've seen these in other places where you would get a chip, and the winner with the most chips get some kind of a. I've seen this. I'm just.
Gets it every year.
Please don't do chips.
I'm gonna let Johnny finish. Everybody, let's let Johnny finish.
I'm just curious too, to that point you're starting to make, DUI arrests/convictions. Have you noticed any kind of a drop in those since the advent of like Uber and Lyft and some of that stuff? Because it seems like it's a lot easier to get a ride in New Bern nowadays
It
versus back in
is.
the days of Subway or.
I have no
Safeway.
sympathy for somebody who gets arrested for DUI, because there's so many options out there to get you home.
Yeah.
So many options. But we generally have the same number of DUIs every year.
And our penalty for
Oh, with the rising
serving,
population, that's not bad.
yeah, our
Population
penalty
is up, that's the same.
Our penalty, sorry, John,
Sorry.
for serving someone, our first penalty is $2,500 from the ABC law enforcement, and then from there it rises, so it's
And
much
doesn't the
greater.
server get?
The server does as well.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
so I mean, well, it depends on the fine, so sometimes it's just the bar owner, and then, now if they served an underage, they can receive, actually, I think that's changed, so if they check an ID now, we're getting into stuff that we're not supposed to talk about, but.
No,
we
this
do
is
get-
fascinating, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
But it-
Well,
you know,
if they
what
train
we
our
do-
servers to shut them off, cut them off, whenever, empower them to do it, so they don't always have to call a manager.
He and I probably are the best two people to have a bar, so.
Well, and I think
yeah.
ALE
Right.
requires that the servers have the authority to cut.
They do.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
do.
They do.
Bonnie, Kristen, y'all have any problem with people bringing like Yetis and stuff like that? Drinks
No,
home?
no, we turn them away, or tell them they can't take it, or we possess
Yeah,
it
use
until
our-
they leave or
use our
something.
stuff.
But there's the online ALE training for surveying. We do that
Yes,
for,
we
we
have,
do that
we have
for
some of that as
Bumpus.
well.
Yeah.
And you can get the sheriff's department now to come in and do a training.
They do, yes. Well, they took over the ALE, so
That's
that's,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, if you wanted to put the kibosh on something like the pub crawl, the people to notify are ALE.
Yes, yeah. So, thank
Well, I mean, are there like city code? Well, that means it wouldn't, because you said it's under the purview of the permits outside of that. But is there someone in the police station who monitors social media for these types of events?
Every month.
I mean, when there was, when we did the street closures, when there was going to be a protest, a walk down the street, the police at that time knew ahead of time that was going to happen. And so they diverted it in a way to make it safer than what other cities were experiencing at that time during 2020. So is there someone who monitors social media?
We do have a crime analyst that has, part of their ancillary responsibility is to monitor social media, but it's like a little net in a big ocean. And a lot of times we'll have staff come to us and say, I saw this on my social media feed. That's sometimes how we obtain that. So one of the strategies that we created here in New Bern was we have a TFO with ALE. So we, not only does the Craven County Sheriff's Office have the ability to regulate and enforce ALE type of violations, we also have one of our detectives that has the same authority. And so what I would have recommended, if we've been aware of the pub crawl, is that that person, and we would have notified ALE just so that we can ensure that if there was going to be some violations and some inappropriate serving, that we could have intervened on that. I don't want to, look, I think all the businesses downtown do a great job as far as I can see. There are some outliers here and there, but it's not across the board. And I don't want to slow business down here. I recognize that the ability of New Bern to grow, because, you know, there are three things that make a city viable. And I know this. It's, do you have good schools? Do you feel safe? And what does your economic development look like for the future? And I don't want to slow any of that down. I just want to make sure we're doing it in a responsible manner. Sure.
I believe I heard you earlier, Chief Gallagher, say that downtown has a lower than normal crowd rate.
Yes, the numbers are very low.
Is that compared to the rest of the city, or is that just compared to other downtowns?
Well, I think it's per capita. I mean, it's not just how many people live down in this area, how many people frequent. I mean, look, I was here over the weekend. My son came from out of town. We had a great opportunity to show him around. The place was packed. And again, I didn't see one instance of anything that would draw my attention to make a phone call and say we need a patrol officer down here. By the way, I did see a patrol officer. But, I mean, there is a lot of people that come down here. And most of them that come down here have a credit card and bills in their pocket, and they want to spend it, which is wonderful. So, yes. Now, we do have some quality of life issues, and I'm not going to put lipstick on that pig. It's a problem, but it's that awful, lawful type of situation.
Chief, for cities our size, across the state of North Carolina, or for that fact, elsewhere, other states, is that standard operationally the way that it works for patrols, that they're pulled from their different patrol areas as needed? Is
That's police deployment 101. It's the same everywhere. You certainly wouldn't have a strategy to tell your officers to go out, right? You have to pre-deploy them in places, because otherwise you'll have 5 officers in this corner and nobody over here. But I will say we have compared the city of New Bern to every other city, plus or minus 5,000 in the entire state of North Carolina. We're right there in the middle. We're not any higher, we're not any lower. The problems that I have is when I go on social media, when I do some open source data, and I look at what is the crime rate of New Bern, and they said we're above average. And I said, that's not true. So when I drill down, I find that any place that has a zip code that has New Bern, whether you're in James City, Trent Woods, all the way down to Havelock, we incorporate all those crime stats in our 30 square miles. And it's unfortunate that people go, well, you know, it looks like it's unsafe in New Bern. That's just simply.
Interesting. I never thought about that. Michael,
So
do you have
is that
another
clear?
question or comment?
No, I think we spent enough time on this. If there's not a problem and there's no way to fix the quality of life complaints, I think I want to be safe like everybody else in downtown, the property and the people and everything. But now we're a problem, we can't fix it. Apparently, if we're below crime and our officer or patrol person is typically pulled out of this area to serve other areas, I don't think we're going to be able to fix this in another hour.
Well, we're not trying to fix it today, we're just trying to get all the information out and then decide how we want
I
to look
just
at
have one last question. With the people who are on the parking patrol, if they see someone who is soliciting a visitor into the downtown, or an employee, somebody who works downtown, just asking for somebody, are they trained in any way to try to discourage that behavior, to address that person?
What they're asked to do, and they're on the same radio frequency as all of our patrol officers, and they're trained to contact a patrol officer to come out to intervene to determine whether or not that action is illegal. The behavior is illegal, I should say.
And you see sometimes our downtown enforcers, there's been some issues where maybe somebody didn't like that they got a ticket or whatever, and they become aggressive, and then they have to call PD to come in and, take care of it, because I've seen a couple people go off on them, because they're over the line or whatever. That's another discussion for another day.
Is that true?
Need to fix that.
Any crime, like if they were to witness any kind of crime?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are the eyes and ears of the New Bern Police Department, and they have contacted us numerous times to provide important information, just like any other citizen would say, hey, you need to come over here and deal with this.
So we
They
already
really
have
can't, we've already got them there,
Yeah.
Monday
During the
through
parking.
Friday. Yeah,
They're probably more alert than
yeah.
the average person walking down the street.
And if I could say this, I know that I'm
Yes.
well over an hour, but I receive so many compliments with respect to our parking enforcement. Occasionally, yes, I get the, this is terrible, I'll never come back here again, I can't believe I got a ticket type of thing, and then I go back and I look and they got a warning ticket. It's not a paid ticket, it's a warning, and we try to educate people. If you're over the line, we give you a warning. Why? Because we don't know that before you park, the car in front, the car in back left you no alternative. We just give you a warning ticket to say, be aware of this. But if you're 3 feet out to the roadway, I'm sorry, or you're right in front of a fire hydrant or whatever the case may be, but the parking staff, again, they are true ambassadors for the city.
The interesting thing is that you give out more tickets for people who park in the wrong direction. It's amazing. People will just, cut across the street and park, so there's more tickets for that than there is anything else. And
And those people that complain about the warnings, we don't want them back.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for the chief?
I just wanted to state this block by block, I found it very impressive as I was reading through it. And having ambassadors on the streets would also, they would be aware of reporting those incidences. There's a whole list of things that they would be
Yes,
looking at.
correct.
I thought this was just great. They've already solved a lot of those quality of life issues just by reading, and I just was very impressed. So I just want to put that out there.
Well, I hope you understood when I said I think these are all great ideas. It's just, right now, our ambassadors, I guess, are our parking
Right.
enforcers. And, I really wanted them named parking ambassadors. And for some reason, the prior chief did not like that. I think they should have ambassadors and look more friendly rather than look more institutional. That's, again, opinion,
Right.
but they are ambassadors. They should be able, and they do, answer questions. Where's this building? Where's that? How do I get here? How do I get there? What time does this open? What time does this close? I think that's good for them to be able to do that. So I feel like we have ambassadors on the street that we're already paying for. Again, there's a cost to everything we do. We just need to determine, do we want to pay that cost? And we can have whatever we want.
Sabrina, are we able to change that wordage now?
We can make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen and ask them, I don't know, Chief, how you feel about that, but the prior chief did not like that, did not want that. So couldn't call them ambassadors. We had to call them parking enforcers.
I don't, it goes by any other name.
Because, it might be a little less aggressive to people to know that we have parking ambassadors. They're here to help you and make sure you're parked correctly and not, And if you're not, then you get a ticket. I don't know.
Definitely is a much friendlier.
And it's a friendlier word. Yeah, I agree.
I would likely not be the police chief here if it wasn't for my interactions with a parking ambassador. Oh, and those warm croissants at Morgan's. But those two things, so I can live here in New Bern.
Well, our alderman's here, he's listened to us have this discussion, and our city manager, maybe they'll take that back and make that recommendation that we change the name to ambassadors. I think it would be nice, and give a little, they should be armed with our city guides, the visitor guide, so they can just pull it out and say, here's a visitor guide to help you. I think it would be a great tool.
Okay, let's go ahead if we don't have any other questions or comments or anything like that. I think, Chief, you were amazing. Thank you so much. The information is really valuable. We appreciate it. I know we have like beautification, maintenance, infrastructure. I want to get to the maintenance issue in the second page that you have on your agenda, because this may be something that we can maybe decide to either move forward with or have more discussion. So I'm going to turn this over to Foster, and this is about the farmer's market and the upgrades that they are requesting.
That's right. So the farmer's market has some deferred maintenance, and so we really need to look at doing some things. The garage doors, they have been nursing those things along the way for many, many years. It's time to replace those garage doors. They have residential ceiling fans in there that really need to be upgraded to commercial ceiling fans. We've gotten more complaints on the restrooms in the farmer's market. The farmer's market has spent money upgrading sinks and toilets, but they still have the wooden partitions in there, and so looking at putting commercial partitions in there with a door to help with privacy. Also, we've noticed a lot of rotted wood on the exterior and interior of the roof structure that we're going to have to address, and some issues with the downspouts and gutters. And so we priced several of these things out. We're looking at about $90,000 to get this up to snuff. Now, this is a city facility. The monthly rent that is paid by the farmer's market does go into the MSD fund. And the city has not spent any funds on this building in many, many, many years. And we need to take care of it.
How much is the rent?
Is
500 a month. Is it?
500.
Have we gone up on that rent?
It just started in I want to say 2015 was the first year. 2015, 2016 was the first year. So we don't, but prior to that, they paid the city $1 a year. There was no rental. And they have been handling some of the maintenance issues the farmer's market has, because of course they weren't paying rent. Now they're paying rent. They're asking the city to take care of some of the maintenance issues that they.
So.
Is there a lease in place?
There is a lease in place.
Okay. Lease are dictated under the lease to be our responsibility?
There is nothing in there that addresses that. However, I want you to remember, this is a city facility. The farmer's market organization does not have a lot of money to do these things. And it's going to come back on the city at some point to address this.
And Foster, you said that the $6,000 a year that's been paid in rent has gone into
Right into the
MSD.
MSD fund.
So close to $50,000 has gone into MSD funds, because you said the rent started in 2016.
I think 2015 or 16, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so close around that $50,000 mark, and so the repairs are 90. So in another, 3-4 years, the balance of rent has gone into it, and this would be fully covered by the rent.
I think it's the responsibility of MSD, since we get the revenues, to take care of it. I would suggest that MSD try and exercise a voice next time the lease is up for renewal.
When is it up for renewal?
They've got 3 more years left.
Yeah, it's a 5-year lease.
What
Yeah.
about the special use of it, like you'll see, people rent it out for events and stuff like that?
Farmer's market gets that income. And I mean, again, I think their rental is like $350, $375, so
reasonable.
very, very low cost.
Yeah, I remember it being really good.
Yeah,
It's a great facility.
So that's like a sublet they do, that they keep that money?
correct. And it could be that in the new lease, we say that all those funds come back to us.
I would move that MSD pay for these repairs, but I also would recommend that MSD look at any lease renewals in several years' time and participate in that process to the extent allowed.
Okay, so is that your motion?
Yeah.
Can I have you revise that motion, and let me ask you why I'd like you to revise the motion? That the motion really should state that we would like to recommend to the Board of Aldermen. Okay, if you would just add that wording into there.
Can we have some further discussion?
Yeah, once we get we got to make sure it's a live motion, okay? So is your motion to recommend
Recommend
that?
to the aldermen that they approve the 90,000 expenditure from MSD funds to bring the farmer's market maintenance up to date.
Okay, is there a second to that? Take the second. All right, now discussion, questions.
So did these recommended repairs come from vendors, or was it a walkthrough by city staff?
City staff did the walkthrough, as we also had prices from commercial garage door installers to tell us what the deal was, whether they could be repaired or whatnot.
Let me revise my question. I'm talking about vendors at the farmer's market. Some of the folks that sell there, not vendors who would be putting it in, but the vendors who use the market, the users of the market.
Did the tenant make requests?
Right.
Yes.
The leaseholder made the request,
Okay.
not
you don't know if
the
they got
individual
input from
booth
the
rent holders.
Okay.
All right, can I add something to this? And I probably should make this clear. I am now on the board of the farmers market as well. I've only been to one meeting. But what I was told in that one meeting was that a number of those garage doors, I go to the farmers market all the time. It was nothing that I really noticed or paid attention to, but not all the garage doors are now open all the time on a given Saturday, just because they're so difficult to open, and in some cases, I guess the vendors are feeling a little bit concerned for their own safety, trying to get them open. So I guess to a certain degree, the vendors have notified the people who sit on the board that this is a problem. And I think it's very clear.
And there's a
to
structure,
everybody.
there's a farmer's market board. Alderman Pearl, are you still a member of that board?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm coming at it from the perspective of my wife worked for a vendor there, so I've swept out the market, and I go there frequently. And when I walked through Saturday, one of the vendors said, "Oh, I heard you got a new job." I'm thinking, what's she talking about? She was referring to this, and as I was speaking with her, the sun was going in my eyes through the transom above the garage door, and she's, we started talking about that, and she said, it'd be nice to have an awning over that, because when those vendors set up outside, those gutters don't work, and it would be just an extra cover of them. So I'm coming at it from the perspective of, well, are there other things that might be?
And there may be down the road, and maybe in the renewal of the lease, as we talked about, if we're going to get the funds from the rental of it, that would give us more funds. But at this point, I think what they're requesting is stuff that just has got to be done. Building's going to fall down. You don't have doors that working, you don't have bathrooms, that are necessarily working. The gutter downspout, that's going to ruin the woodwork roof. So these are things I think that have to be done.
With what I applied for the Swiss Fair, for my awning in the front, for the grant, was that any of their grant money? Could we get that for the farmer's market, awnings and all that?
I mean, you could get up to $2,500 potentially for an awning. I mean, that's the maximum that the
Farmer's
grant
market would have to
actually.
apply for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the city would actually have to apply for it, because the
They own
city
the building.
owns the building.
A question.
Let's go to this side of the table. Go ahead, Gretchen, and then Mike.
Talk about the bathroom upgrades. Are the bathrooms ADA compliant?
The bathrooms are ADA compliant, with the exception of the current partitions that are in there.
Okay.
One of the issues that you have is they have booths that are on the exterior of the restroom, so that limits the use of a wheelchair for being able to get in there. So they have to work on those types of issues with relocating some vendors and making some aisles a little wider as you go into the restroom.
So is that part of this recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mike?
That was my question.
Okay.
Is the lease available somewhere where we can view it?
Sure, it's public record.
Where would we look for that on the
We
website?
can send it out.
Okay, yeah, if
Thank
you
you.
would, I'll just make a note.
I'm curious too, has the farmer's market, have they ever looked at anything like bait or somebody like that for funds? They're a nonprofit.
I could not tell
You
you,
never-
but I can find out.
I would be really shocked if there's any nonprofit that's going to make a contribution to the city of New Bern for maintenance of their properties.
The first thing like that, tough thing to get a grant for. Truly.
This building was funded by, not FDA, what is it? USDA. It was funded by USDA. The county originally got the grant for the USDA, and they funded the building of it, which then was turned over to the city of New Bern. And it was a partnership, and that's where the money came from to build it, I believe in the early 80s.
There's probably plenty of grants out there still for maintenance, and someone will look at it, but this doesn't sound like it's gonna have time to wait or apply for grants.
And we could always do that to make additional upgrades. You know, I think at some point, they've always talked about expanding it and, you know, out the back and maybe going out that way, which would be, you know, I think a good thing to provide for more vendors to be able to utilize it.
These projects alone are gonna go a long way for the farmer's market, without a doubt.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Does anybody else have any other questions? Anybody?
I have a
Comments?
question. Who
Yes, sir.
carries insurance on this? Liability would be the city. Are they required to carry?
They are required to have general liability. We have insurance on the property.
Very good?
Good.
Okay. So motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay?
First project, so.
Chris was the
Yeah.
Chris Huffman.
First recommendation.
First recommendation. Okay, we are at 1:30. I've got one business item that I want to get to really quick. The city manager, our next regular meeting date, so our quarterly regular meeting of the MSD is May the 21st, but that is a city budget workshop week. So he's asking if we could change it to either the 7th or the 14th, is that correct? Of May. So we would need to discuss that, and if so, make a motion and adjust that.
I don't have anything.
Chris has nothing to do.
No, it's May
Sure.
7th or 14th?
Yes, sir. It's a Tuesday, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
I would say the 7th.
7th is better for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7th.
7th?
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay with you? All right. So can I have a motion to change the meeting date from May 21st to May 7th?
So,
Thank Johnny, in a second.
Second.
Vaughn is the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Can I add
Yes,
something to that?
please.
If anyone needs to park on
Parking
on
vacancy.
the board with a parking lot right out here next to Mitchell's, off of Craven Street, you're welcome to, any of the board members, get a parking ticket. At lunchtime, it's usually, we get more people parking there than normal, but if there's spaces available, feel free. Anybody wants to walk.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Okay, let's talk about what we want to do next. Again, what we've done is kind of pull apart some of these projects and look at them. I think we need to circle around back to the inner core again. I've been talking to Lynn, since that would be probably our most major important project, just to, again, get more information. And we've been talking a little bit, since we've, you know, kind of in discussion decided that we would only concentrate on the city property. We feel like that at this point is the easiest thing to do, just concentrate on the city property, with the exceptions of trying to relocate trash to potentially 2 private owners and see if we could work something with them. We talked to Lynn a little bit about underground trash, you know, to see if that's something we're still trying to work and see what information we can get.
And if GFL will support it.
Yeah, if GFL would have the equipment to support that, and then what does it cost? We're trying to get some more information on that. You know, what would you like for our next steps to be?
Well, the problem I see is we've got one in the corner of our parking lot, and, I mean, it's restaurant. I would say probably at least half of the trash in there. And, you know, there's no way to fix the mess that's involved. But the biggest problem is when the trucks come and dump it in the morning,
Get
is
it all over the
like Monday morning, because they don't dump on Sundays, and weekends are obviously bigger, there's trash a lot of times. It may not even be, maybe, middle of the week, trash falls out, and it could just be cardboard boxes, the wind's catching or whatever, and the drivers drive off. I think if there was a fenced-in area, it would keep the extra trash from people that aren't supposed to be dumping in there. It would also mean that the people dumping the trash, if it's something that vendors are doing, they would have to open the gate, dump the trash, they have to get out closed. I think that would also help. Maybe getting them to get that bag and throw it back in the trash.
Well, let us tell you about
Does it?
our experience behind the Chelsea. We have the fence, and they never close the gate. So we come and we're trying to park in that area there. We have to get out of the car, close the gate so we could get around.
The hinge has been broken. I've had to call the city to get them to come back out and weld it.
I was hoping that would be an easy solution.
Well, it is if the boss at the garbage PO, they do not shut the gates. They leave it wide open.
I think it could be an easy solution with a proper design, because I deal with dumpsters
All the time?
all the time.
Well, it certainly
Jay,
looks
With
better.
with site design, and it's always something that everyone thinks about at the last moment, and it doesn't get the attention that it should. And with a sensible, attractive, believe it or not, dumpster enclosure design with some more thought to it, to the doors and gates than just, I'll let the contractor deal with that. I think we can come up with a good solution.
Sounds like a good trash man.
Yeah, I was going to say,
It
so,
does look nice.
I've got a lot of
You can't see
pictures.
it, Yeah.
yeah.
No, thank you. Just
But it's the same thing where we are, you see the trash on Monday morning from them. Well, they pick up on Monday and you see
Every
that.
day, I drive right by, just staff, we go out there and so.
Yeah, versus the broken bottles that
Now,
weren't broken a few months.
one of the other solutions, Lynn and I have talked about this, is a compactor, especially, with, that would, allow for a little more trash and not maybe make it overflow, but they come in, I think, one's really tall and one's really wide. The one that's really tall, I told Lynn, that won't work because you have our staff members trying to throw a bag up, they'll miss it every time.
They have steps going up to them.
Yeah.
They do have steps going.
Yeah, but still, I could just see somebody trying to, do this, swing it, and the bag breaks and gets all over the place, and.
But we have to, but I think we have to have a permanent location in
Exactly,
mind.
yes.
At that point in time, we're going to
You'd have to have power.
moving into that direction with a trash compactor. We have to have an exact plan as to where it's going to be housed on a
Dave,
permanent
maybe
basis.
you and I, or a couple of us, we could walk back in there, maybe you can identify where you think it would look good, or where you think the appropriate place, knowing what our boundaries are, and seeing what you think.
Well, do that in conjunction with the, there's been a lot of time and energy spent on this, and there is that original plan that we saw in the
Right,
first meeting.
yeah, but I mean, to look at that, but him then saying, okay, you could put this fence, you could put a gate, you could do.
And also GFL, getting them involved in it, because they have vehicles and they know what vehicles,
I know, but
turning radiuses and all that
And
stuff.
we've had GFL come out and take a look at some potential locations for trash compactors to be located. So we can just kind of resume those conversations, because it's been probably about a year.
I'm a great believer in knowledge is good. Having said that, I think an underground thing is a non-starter. You got water table issues.
I agree, but we're just at this point looking at it.
That would be the only underground one in their entire service area, so they'd have to buy a truck for that one dumpster. It's just not going to happen. We can spin our wheels, but I'm just saying.
At this
it's not
point,
gonna
we're
improve
just
it.
trying to find solutions.
There are other options where underground.
Are there?
Yeah, there's a variety of different options you can get. There's ones where it actually is like on an elevator, and it lifts it up, and you have rolling bins that come out that could easily then be picked up by a truck. Now, whether or not that's available here, I know they use them in the Netherlands.
And whether or not that's economic,
It sounds
realistic.
Right, it does sound expensive, but it would certainly be a
And you
lot
still have the
less.
water table issue.
But you do
flooding.
quite well, I hadn't thought about that, so that's an issue.
And it could be partial underground too, so at least it's not as large, so you put it underground a couple feet, so it gets the profile down.
And then, yeah,
But with GFL scheduled for pickup, they do 6-day-a-week trash, 3-day-a-week for recycling. I know in their opinions, in some of the preliminary conversations that we've had, trash compactors are going to give us the best volume for it, for our trash, especially as hopefully there's continued growth in the downtown area, more business expansion, and more demands that will happen as a result of it. The trash compactors seem like the best solutions for being able to meet future needs as well as current needs.
And those are, I say mobile trash compactors, right?
Yes, that's correct. They built it.
And they build differently for those.
Yeah.
Because David has so much knowledge about trash.
Yes. He's going to be the trash czar.
Maybe put him on the agenda for the next meeting, and he can give us a little presentation on some of the options just get visuals on those options.
Yeah, I think maybe, let's just say, go back there and look, you take the design, that concept C maybe, and look at that versus, and get with Lynn maybe, because she's got the information on the compactors, the sizes of them, right? Or maybe you can connect them with GFL. Okay, because they've done a lot of research. So with that being said, our next regular meeting now will be May the 7th. Do we just want to go to our regular meeting, or do we want to have another workshop?
Is the presentation by David going to be at that 21st meeting?
No, it's now the May the 7th.
May 7th, right.
Right, yes. So we just put that on the agenda. Let's just go to May 7th then, so we won't have another workshop. And that'll give you time.
Mr. Trash.
Because if we can solve the trash issue, then we can move forward on trying to really get some design work stuff done for that walkthrough and connector. Because that's the whole issue. If we can't solve the trash, we're not gonna be able to.
Oh, I know.
So is everybody understand that, we've got to solve that trash issue, and then we can move on to potentially looking at the design and how we can work that, and the parking and everything else, other nightmares that will come along with that. Everybody good? Okay. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring? Foster made the agenda nice and broad so that we can throw whatever we wanted to in there. We've got about 20 minutes, but if we're done, I don't want to drag people out, and make sure if you haven't eaten lunch, grab a sandwich. Anybody else have anything for the good Alderman Crowe? Do you have anything? No. Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
I really think we need to consider a survey of the inner core. I just feel that we do. We've got all kinds of right-of-ways, and we've just got areas that are.
Well, we would just survey the city's portion, not the private portion.
Okay, from Craven Street all the way to Bear Plaza, is that what you're talking, that piece?
Correct.
Just that
Just
piece?
because once we get into private property, whole nother issue.
Right.
So agreed, Mr. City Manager?
Sure. If
Yeah.
you'd like to recommend that
No.
that funds be spent to do that?
To do a survey of just the city property? Is that what you're talking
You
about?
can probably find the nails, it work pretty well out there.
I don't know how that's not my bailiwick. I don't know how that works, and somebody can just walk in and say, this is
Can
our
we see what
boundaries.
we have available before we spend
Yeah.
money?
I think-
I wouldn't be inclined to do that.
No,
until we know what we have.
there's information we can gather from other sources.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Michael. If we were looking at the whole area, yes, we would have to survey to see whose property is what, but at this point, I think we've pretty much decided we didn't want to go down that path.
Okay, but like with this next dumpster project,
Right.
where is it going to be on city property, or do you want to put it on private property?
So we talked about, based on that concept C, a portion of it would be angled on John Roberts' property, I guess, the
So it
Morgan's
is
property.
private property.
That would be the private property
That's
there.
also the purpose for their on-site visit,
To look at-
to be determined.
To be determined, we don't know, and then the other one was, I think, at Andy Schiff's property on the backside there.
And I spoke to him, I can't remember if it was last week or week before, and he seemed very agreeable.
He did,
to work with us.
me too, I talked to him as well, he says, as long as everybody's, partnering in it, he seems willing to come to the table, so we have to strike while the iron is hot, don't we? I think we should, anyway.
Like behind the old hotel? Is that where his
No.
property
No,
over there?
No, right behind
up
the
here.
parking lot behind here.
The
So where the
chambers.
parking lot is, there's like 5 or 6 spaces.
Right, that little area
Yeah,
there?
that's
Yeah.
Andy Schiff's.
Yeah,
Okay, he owns that too.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and who would be using that dumpster? It would be Ratty's and MJ's, and
I don't think we know all the answers.
Yeah, we don't, we
at
have
this
no,
point.
yeah, depending on the capacity of it, do they get a compactor, do they not get a compactor, how much does it hold?
Okay.
You know, are residents using it versus commercial or everybody together? I think that's the answers we have to get, so it'll be
And
a lot.
who's paying for it?
Well,
Yeah.
maybe, talk because the amount of people that use our dumpster, we get ours dumped every day. So I don't know who uses dumpsters back here, but why?
They get dumped every day.
Yeah,
They get-
is it the residents too, or is it
Yes.
just the business owners?
No.
It's a combination, but it depends on where. Like, the residents that are over the shops where, where Snapdragon is, they have their own blow-off carts that are behind there. But other residents are participating in using some of these
So
dumpsters.
that's why you have two.
Correct, 2 sets.
Okay.
Well, and also too, because the Raddy's people weren't gonna walk all the way over to Morgan's, and the Poppies and these guys aren't gonna walk all the way over to the other place, so they were trying to put 2, even though your guys walk a fair distance to get to your trash can.
We got wheels on our trash cans.
Yeah. I know.
They do too, but I mean, it goes all the way, from, at least in James, maybe farther, down Middle Street, down Craven, and then to somewhere between there to Morgan's.
All of them use that one dumpster.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, and sometimes when one fills up, they transition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, yeah. And people in general kind of move it around as well. And then when the cardboard recycling gets filled up,
Yeah.
then they start dumping that into the truck.
Yeah, our office uses it, Chamber, Michael Rogers. I mean, there's a mixture between restaurants, offices. I
Same
mean,
goes for us.
Mansions, that sometimes have that extra stuff.
And then there's the miscellaneous other people that just happen to go through.
I got a vacuum and a gas tank that was.
The worst is
Couches
outdoor
that I really love.
Yeah.
home furniture. We
Yeah,
have,
couches, yeah.
Wow. It's just amazing what people, and we have pictures of people coming in the back here. I saw them during my time as an alderman. People come in and we just, of course, can't get their license plate, but come in and dump in their trash. And drive away. Yeah, and drive away.
Take it back to the house.
Yeah, take it back, yeah, they don't want to pay
Yeah.
for the sticker.
Find the bill or
You
something.
know, it may not, if we've got fences,
I would know to open trash bags. and find
lock,
out
or
they're-
you put a sign,
Too stupid to realize.
people don't realize we dump trash and you dump it for free.
Well, the
Yeah.
chief is here. If we do find someone that's illegally dumping,
Great question.
is that a penalty? Is that a,
I'd have to check the trespassing ordinance, and there is illegal dumping, you can, so I'll get back with you on that. You can't just take your trash and dump it in the street. That's illegal. But can you dump it in a trash can that doesn't belong to you? I don't know, I'd have to research that.
yeah, okay, thank you.
You may be afraid of what you learn. No more dump stickers for me, man. I'm gonna visit Chris.
Just take $2.
It's safe back there.
No return envelopes, though.
Okay, anybody else have anything for the good of the order that you'd like to bring forward to the MSD today? If not, then I will have a motion to adjourn. Okay.